What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Just want to make a quick video for you guys about the incredible things that God has done in my life. And one of those is a vision that he gave me when I was young, about 10 or 11 years old, when I was out camping out in West Texas with my family. Now, a lot of people are making videos on YouTube about how they've seen God in visions, and a lot of children are seeing the Lord and testifying, and I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's wonderful. I think it just goes to show that the prophecy is still being fulfilled in the Bible, right? A lot of us tend to stick to just the things in Revelation, but you look back further and you have all the confirmation in, Daniel and Joel. You have all these different prophets who prophesied of the end times. God showed them these things, and my experience in particular was not a long or drawn out one, but it was unique. It was something that I had, like I said, when I was younger, around 10 or 11, and it's not something I talk about a lot because for many years I grew up in an environment where having visions, having dreams weren't a huge deal. And there is some talk in the New Testament about how we shouldn't take dreams and visions super seriously, as in we shouldn't devote our whole lives to them and revolve our lives around them. But I do think that they are there for a reason. God gives us these things for a reason. If you guys have experienced any dreams or visions or anything of that sort, please let me know in the comments below. I think it's really important that we all hear these things so that we can build each other up and encourage each other with these things. So let me jump into my story, guys. So when I was about 10 or 11 years old, my family and I went to West Texas. My dad had a deer lease, and we went and we camped over the weekend. And I can't remember if this was around the time that I was really starting to come around to acknowledging, Jesus as Lord. I can't remember if this was before or after, crying out to God. But I remember I was sleeping at night, and I had this dream that I saw God sitting on the throne, and I saw, Jesus sitting on the throne. And it was a very surreal dream. It was extremely out of left field. In fact, to this day, I can remember it clear as day. And it didn't even feel like a dream. It felt like sort of an out-of-body experience. It felt something like otherworldly. That's the best way I know how to describe it. Like, it wasn't me in the dream. It was like my spirit, my soul in the dream. But anyway, how this dream went about, all I remember, it felt like I was just shooting upwards, thousands, millions of miles per hour, at this super fast speed. And like I said, it felt like it was my spirit, right? Like I didn't have, from what I perceived, I didn't have like a body. And I remember it was like I shot up, and it felt almost instantaneous. I felt like I was shooting upwards. And eventually I broke through this cloud layer, and it was really incredible what happened next. When I broke through this cloud layer, it's like I was off to the left corner of the throne, and I remember looking, seeing the throne, seeing everything. It wasn't for very long, maybe a few seconds, but from what I remember seeing, there was light, right? There was light everywhere. There was no sun, but there was light everywhere. It was beautiful colors, like we can see colors like yellow and purple and pink and blue, but it was like all the colors at once everywhere. It was beautiful. Everything was glowing. There was a peace. There was an incredible peace surrounding everything. The ground was like just slow moving clouds, very graceful, very simple. And I almost want to say there was something beyond the clouds on the ground that I couldn't see. But the most important figure in this dream was, there was a throne. I can't remember exactly what the throne looked like, although I want to say it was like gold. but I was so fixated by who was on the throne. And it was someone dressed in all white. It was the most white garment, most white robe I've ever seen in my life. It was almost sparkling white. There was no blemish, no spot, no wrinkle, nothing. It was beautiful. It was, like computer generated. When you watch commercials and they advertise how white it's going to make your clothes. Even the computer generated, bright glowing white clothes, it doesn't come close to what this was. And the person who sat on the throne, their hands were just sitting there. They were confident. The way they were sitting was confident. It was put together. It was peaceful. And their hands were like gold. And I couldn't really make out the feet, but it seemed like this person was just glowing with power, right? It was majesty, power, gold. And the face, the head of this person, which I believe was Jesus, was bright like the sun, guys. I kid you not. And I was just reading Matthew yesterday about how when, Jesus was talking to Elijah and Moses, how he had the whitest robe, face shone like the sun, and that's exactly what it was like. His face was like the sun. And when I say like the sun, it's almost like, if you guys have ever looked, out of the corner of your eye, you've ever looked at the sun directly, it's bright. Like you can't really look at it for too long, but it was bright to where I could see it. I could see the light. And I think the light was giving light to everything. There was no shadow, again, there was no shadow anywhere. It was just all brightness. It was just, everything was lit up. And there was a rainbow over the throne. And the face was, like I said, it was like sun, it was like fire. It was like, you could look at it. But like I said, I was off to the left in the corner. When the Lord turned, he again just sat on his throne, only his head turned. And when it met, like I couldn't see any eyes, I couldn't see any face, but I could tell that it turned and it looked at me. And when it looked at me, when the Lord looked at me, I became like a dead man. There was so many different feelings I had in that moment. It was surreal. I became like a dead man. That's the best way I knew how to describe it. I felt peace. I felt like he was seeing straight through me. He was seeing straight through my soul and my spirit. He was seeing into me. It's like he knew me. It wasn't like he was looking at a stranger. It's like he knew me, and I couldn't see his eyes, but I could feel his gaze, and I could understand it. And it was like this awe I cannot put into words. And it made me fall. It made me, like I said, I didn't feel like I had a body, but it made me feel like I became like a dead person. I couldn't behold his gaze. I couldn't look any longer than that millisecond. And it's in that moment, I felt all these things, peace and being understood, and also the fear of the Lord. It's like I also understood what the fear of the Lord meant. It was an awe. It was a wonder. It wasn't like I'm scared and I'm gonna, it was like I feel seen. I feel fearful, awful, like I want to, like this is God, this is Jesus. And in that moment when I felt like I became like a dead person, all of a sudden it was almost like I started to lose the consciousness that I had in that moment. And I felt like I shot back down, 1,000,000 miles an hour. I felt like I shot back down into my body. And that's when I woke up. And I remember the rest of the day, I was just walking around. Again, we were, camping out in West Texas. There wasn't a whole lot. We were on a little farm. I just remember walking around thinking about this all day. And, I've told this to a couple people in my life, but it's not something I've talked about a whole lot. But I think it's interesting. I think it's fascinating because a lot of children, a lot of people are having these visions. I remember having that vision. And other things recently have happened in my life that I would like to make a video about. Let me know if you guys want to hear that. Instances in, the physical world in reality that I've had over the last couple of years that have been extremely spiritually awakening. And I believe that God is moving in ways we can't completely understand. And I believe His Spirit is moving in ways we can't completely understand. And sometimes I ask myself why I had that vision. Like, why would God give me that vision? Some people would chalk it up to just a dream. Some people would chalk it up to just, an experience or something. But like I said, it was clear as day. I can remember it just like it was yesterday, and it was otherworldly. It was something I cannot put into words. It was unlike any other dream I've ever had. And sometimes when my faith is shaken, sometimes when things get rough, I always think back to that dream, and I think how real it was and how biblically accurate it was. And it kind of renews my faith, and I kind of look to that, and I thank God and I thank Him for what He's done. And I think it's just amazing what He's doing in my life and in others' lives. So guys, if you have any experiences, if you have anything that you want to add, like comments, questions, things that you're just wrestling with, spiritually, emotionally, whatever that might look like, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you guys, and Lord willing, I'll see y'all in the next one.